General Vexthar roared. The sound filled the arena, a noise of pure rage and disbelief that made several smaller aliens cover their ears. He was a general, a decorated warrior who had fought in wars across 20 star systems. He was not supposed to be lying on the floor, held down by a creature that weighed less than one of his legs. He pushed against the mat with his free hand, trying to lift his massive body. Taman simply leaned back slightly, changing the angle of pressure on the trapped arm. The general's armor creaked louder. A hairline crack appeared in one of the plates near his elbow joint. "Release me." Vexthar's voice shook with fury and something else, something he had never felt before in combat. "Release me this instant." Taman's expression didn't change. His face was calm, almost peaceful, despite the blood still dripping from his split lip. "Apologize first. I am a general of the Coalition Strike Division." "I will have you executed for this." The pressure increased by the smallest amount. Just a fraction more force precisely applied. The crack in the armor spread. Inside that armor, the general's joint was bending past the point where Krell anatomy was meant to flex. Pain shot up his arm, sharp and bright. Park Dabin watched from above, her hands gripping the observation rail so hard her knuckles turned white. She wanted to tell Taman to stop, to release the general before this went any further, but she also knew her friend. Once Taman committed to something, he saw it through to the end. It was one of the things that made him an excellent soldier. It was also one of the things that might get him killed today. Instructor Velcor stood frozen, his 6 arms hanging uselessly at his sides. His hand hovered near the communication panel, ready to call security. But he didn't press the button. Part of him was afraid that interrupting might make things worse. Another part, a part he would never admit out loud, was deeply curious to see how this ended. Shin Boram had moved closer, her medical scanner already in hand. She was reading Taman's vital signs from where she stood. His heart rate was elevated but controlled. His breathing was steady. Whatever was happening inside his body, he was managing it. She had studied human physiology extensively since joining the academy, fascinated by how differently human bodies responded to stress compared to other species. What she was seeing now was something called the adrenaline response. When humans faced danger, their bodies flooded with chemicals that changed how they functioned. Pain decreased. Strength increased. Time seemed to slow down. It was an ancient survival mechanism from when humans hunted animals much larger than themselves on Earth. Other species had similar responses, but humans had refined theirs through millions of years of being both predator and prey on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. General Vexthar thrashed again, using every bit of his considerable strength. The mat beneath them cracked. The general's muscles bulged against his armor, and Taman held firm, his smaller body using angles and leverage that made strength almost irrelevant. How is this possible? Vexthar's voice had changed. The anger was still there, but now fear mixed with it. Real fear. What are you? I'm human, Taman replied simply. This is what we do. You're bigger and stronger, but you've never had to learn how to fight something bigger and stronger than you. We've never fought anything smaller and weaker than us. Every predator on our world was faster, stronger, had better teeth, better claws. We survived anyway. This is how. The general tried a different approach. Instead of pushing up, he tried to pull his arm back, attempting to drag Taman with him. Taman rode the movement like a surfer on a wave, maintaining perfect balance and control. He shifted his weight, and the pressure on the general's arm increased again. A sound came from inside the armor, something between a crack and a pop. Not quite breaking, but close. Very close, I'm sorry. The words exploded from Vexthar's mouth. I'm sorry, please. You're going to break it. The arena went completely silent. Cadets who had been watching in shocked fascination now looked away, embarrassed for the general. In Krell culture, admitting pain was shameful. Begging for mercy was unthinkable. But here was General Vexthar, one of the most feared warriors in the Coalition military, begging a human cadet to release him. Taman held the position for one more second, not to be cruel but to make sure the lesson was learned. Then he released the general's arm and stepped back quickly, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. Vexthar scrambled away, moving faster than anyone had ever seen him move. He cradled his arm against his chest, his yellow eyes wide and showing white around the edges. He looked at Taman the way someone might look at a dangerous animal that had just reminded them why it was dangerous. For several long seconds, Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The training arena had become a frozen tableau of shock and disbelief. Then the doors burst open again. Admiral Corvin entered with a full security team behind him. The Admiral was Thexian, a species known for their logical minds and strict adherence to rules. He was tall and thin with gray skin and too many joints in his limbs. His face was angular, all sharp lines and calculating eyes. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I received an emergency alert from this training arena." Instructor Velcor finally found his voice. "Sir, there was an incident. Cadet Han Taman assaulted General Vexthar." The Admiral's eyes moved from the instructor to the General, who was still on the floor cradling his arm, then to Taman, who stood calmly with blood on his face and his hands still raised. "Cadet Han Taman," the Admiral said, his voice formal and cold. "You are under arrest for assaulting a superior officer. Security, take him into custody." 2 guards moved forward. They were both Krell, though smaller than Vexthar. They approached Taman cautiously, having just witnessed what he could do. But Taman didn't resist. He lowered his hands slowly and allowed them to place restraints on his wrists. Park Dabin couldn't stay silent anymore. "Admiral, please." The General struck Taman first. "We all saw it. He was defending himself." The Admiral raised one long-fingered hand. "The security footage will be reviewed. Until then, the cadet will be held in detention. Take him away." As the guards led Taman toward the exit, he passed by Park Dabin and the other human cadets. His friend looked at him with tears in her eyes, terrified of what would happen next. But Taman gave her a small nod. Everything would be okay. Or if it wouldn't be okay, he had at least stood up for himself and for all humans. Sometimes that was more important than being safe. The other human cadets watched him go. Then one by one they stood at attention. Not the casual attention of academy students, but the rigid, formal attention of soldiers honoring one of their own. It spread through the human section like a wave. The message was clear to everyone in the arena. Taman had acted for all of them. Whatever happened to him now, he hadn't just defended himself. He had defended humanity's honor. As Taman disappeared through the doors, General Vexthar finally pulled himself to his feet. His arm hung at an awkward angle, definitely damaged even if not broken. His pride was hurt even worse than his body. He looked around the arena at the faces staring at him. He saw pity in some eyes, disgust in others. Worst of all, he saw fear in the eyes of his fellow Krell. They were looking at him the way they might look at a warrior who had lost his edge, who was no longer fit to lead. "This is not over," he said, his voice trying to regain its commanding tone. "That human will pay for what he did." But everyone in the arena knew the truth. Something had shifted today. The balance of respect and fear that maintained the hierarchy of the coalition military had changed. Humans, who everyone had dismissed as weak and fragile, had just demonstrated something terrifying. They might not be the strongest. They might not be the fastest. But they were the most dangerous when cornered. In the detention area, Taman sat alone in a cell designed for dangerous prisoners. Energy barriers hummed around him, capable of containing even the most violent criminals. He sat on the simple metal bench and finally allowed himself to feel the pain in his face. His jaw throbbed. His eye was swelling shut. His lip still bled slowly, but he was calm. He had done the right thing. He had followed coalition regulations. And most importantly, he had shown every alien in that arena that humans weren't victims. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were not to be dismissed or bullied. The communication panel near his cell activated. Park Dabin's face appeared on the screen. She must have pulled strings to get through to him so quickly. "Taman, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dabin, just bruised." "Just bruised? You put a general on the floor. Do you know what they could do to you?" "They could execute me," Taman said calmly. "But they won't. They'll review the footage. They'll see he struck me first. Coalition law is clear on self-defense. And if they decide differently, if they decide to make an example of you," Taman smiled, though it hurt his split lip, "then every human in the galaxy will know that I defended myself when an alien general attacked me. They'll know I didn't back down. That's worth whatever happens next." Park Dabin wiped her eyes. "You're either the bravest person I know or the most stupid. Can't it be both?" Despite everything, she laughed. It was a short, slightly hysterical laugh, but it was something. The whole Admiral Corvin sat in his office watching the security footage for the 7th time. His office was simple and clean, with windows that looked out into the darkness of space. Stars glittered beyond the glass, cold and distant. Right now he felt as cold as those stars. On the screen he watched General Vexthar strike Cadet Han Taman. He watched the human stagger but not fall. He watched Taman smile that terrible smile. Then he watched the human move faster than the camera could properly track, taking down a warrior 3 times his size in less than 3 seconds. The Admiral paused the video and rubbed his temples. He had been commander of Celestial Summit Station for 15 years. In all that time he had never seen anything quite like this. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Instructor Velcor came in, followed by General Vexthar. The general's arm was in a medical brace, the blue armor removed to allow for treatment. Without his armor, he looked smaller, more vulnerable. His face was drawn with pain and something darker. "Shame." "General, are you well enough to provide your statement?" the Admiral asked. "I am functional," Vexthar replied stiffly. "Good. Tell me exactly what happened in the training arena." The general shifted uncomfortably. The human cadets completed an exercise that a Krell team had previously failed. "I questioned their methods." The cadet, Han Taman, responded with insubordination. "I administered discipline." Admiral Corvin played the video. The sound of the strike was clear and loud. "This is discipline." By Krell standards, it was a light correction. By human standards, it was assault that could have killed him. The Admiral's voice was cold. "You struck a cadet without cause during a training exercise. This violates Coalition Regulation 447C. The human showed disrespect. The human answered your question honestly and respectfully. I've watched this footage 7 times, General. There is no disrespect in his words or tone." The Admiral leaned forward. "What I see is an officer allowing personal prejudice to override his judgment." Vexthar's face darkened with anger, but he said nothing. What could he say? The footage showed the truth clearly. "Explain to me how a second-year cadet was able to defeat you in hand-to-hand combat," the Admiral continued. "I was not defeated. He used trickery and you begged him for mercy." "I heard you. Every cadet in that arena heard you." The Admiral's voice cut like ice. "How did this happen?" The general was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost confused. "I don't know. I'm faster than him, stronger than him. But when I reached for him, he moved. Then I was on the ground and couldn't get up. Every time I tried to rise or escape, the pain increased. It was like fighting smoke. I couldn't grasp him properly." Admiral Corvin turned to his computer and pulled up a file. "I've been reading about human combat techniques. It seems we've fundamentally misunderstood their species. They come from what we classify as a Category 12 death world. Do you know what that means?" "It means their planet is dangerous," Velcor offered. "It means their planet spent millions of years trying to kill them. Humans evolved alongside predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than they were. They survived not through physical advantages but through intelligence, endurance, and the ability to defeat larger opponents." The Admiral pulled up images of Earth's animals: lions, bears, crocodiles. These creatures all hunted humans at various points in their evolution. Humans had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, so they learned to fight smart instead of strong. He showed a video of human martial arts, fighters throwing opponents twice their size, joint locks, leverage techniques, pressure points. While your people evolved to be the strongest on your world, humans evolved to defeat the strongest on theirs. They developed hundreds of fighting systems over thousands of years, all designed around one principle: how to beat someone bigger and stronger than you. Vexthar watched the screen, his expression complicated. "I had no idea. None of us did. We accepted humans into the coalition because they showed promise. We tested their intelligence, their technology, their willingness to cooperate. We never properly evaluated their combat capabilities because they seemed physically weak." The Admiral closed the files. "We made assumptions. Those assumptions were wrong." Another knock on the door. This time it was Ambassador Cho Minho from Earth's Diplomatic Corps. He was an older human with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind him came 2 other humans in formal uniforms. "Admiral, thank you for seeing me on short notice," the ambassador said politely. "Ambassador, I assume you're here about Cadet Han Taman." "I am. I'd like to request his immediate release and the dismissal of all charges." General Vexthar stood up straighter, his face hardening. The human assaulted me. He cannot simply— General Vexthar, the ambassador interrupted smoothly. You struck first. Coalition law is very clear on self-defense. My government has reviewed the footage. Cadet Han used appropriate defensive force against an unprovoked assault. Appropriate. He could have broken my arm. He could have, the ambassador agreed. He chose not to. Human combat doctrine emphasizes control and minimal necessary force. The cadet showed remarkable restraint given that you attacked him hard enough to fracture his cheekbone. The admiral looked at the general. Is this true? You fractured his facial bones? I did not intend to cause such injury. By Krell standards, by coalition standards, the ambassador cut in, you assaulted a cadet and caused significant bodily harm. The fact that you didn't intend to kill him doesn't make it legal. Admiral Corvin stood up from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. For a long moment, he said nothing. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Ambassador, I need to understand something. Cadet Han's response was instantaneous and extremely effective. Is this level of training standard for humans entering coalition military service? Yes, the ambassador replied. Every human you see in this academy has already completed basic military training on Earth. They know hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, survival skills, and tactical operations. We consider this the minimum preparation for military service. And the other human cadets? They all have this training? Every single one. It's prerequisite for acceptance to off-world assignments. The admiral processed this information. The coalition had 50 human cadets currently enrolled at Celestial Summit Station. 50 trained fighters who everyone had dismissed as weak because they didn't have armored skin or enhanced strength. We've been evaluating humans incorrectly, he said finally. We've been comparing you to other species based on raw physical capabilities. But that's not where your strength lies, is it? No, Admiral, the ambassador said. Our strength is adaptation, endurance, and tactical thinking. We learned long ago that we couldn't outrun the lion or outfight the bear. So we learned to outsmart them both. General Vexthar spoke up, his voice quieter than before. In the moment when I was on the ground, unable to rise, I felt something I've never felt in combat. It wasn't fear of pain or death. It was fear of something patient. The human would have held that position until my arm separated from my body if necessary. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was simply waiting for me to understand my situation. That patience was more terrifying than any rage I've ever faced. The ambassador nodded slowly. That's an accurate description of human combat psychology. We're persistence predators, General. On Earth, humans would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up. We don't stop. We keep coming until we win or we die. That mindset translates into everything we do, including combat. A long silence filled the office. Admiral Corvin finally turned from the window. I need to convene the Academy Council immediately. This situation has implications far beyond one cadet and one general. He looked at Vexthar. General, you will provide full testimony. Ambassador, your presence will be required as well. Within an hour, the council chamber was filled with representatives from a dozen species. The atmosphere was tense. News of the incident had spread through the station like wildfire. Everyone had an opinion. Many were demanding that Taman be executed as an example. Others, particularly some of the smaller species, were quietly pleased to see a Krell general humbled. Admiral Corvin called the session to order. We are here to address the incident between General Vexthar and Cadet Han Taman. Both parties will have the opportunity to present their perspective. However, I want to remind everyone that we will be following coalition law, not personal feelings or species loyalty. The Krell delegation immediately demanded harsh punishment. This human attacked a general officer. Such insubordination cannot be tolerated. Ambassador Chomino stood calmly. With respect, the human defended himself against an unprovoked assault. Let me present the facts. He projected the security footage onto the main screen. Every angle was visible. The strike, the takedown, the restraint. The council chamber fell silent as the footage played again. Every member watched carefully. Some had already seen it, but watching it in the formal setting of a legal proceeding was different. This wasn't entertainment or gossip. This was evidence. When the video ended, Admiral Corvin spoke. The footage is clear. General Vexthar struck Cadet Han first. The cadet responded defensively. Under Coalition Regulation 447C, This is lawful self-defense. The Krell representative, a female general named Korvan, stood. She was older than Vexthar, with scars crossing her armor plating. Admiral, we do not dispute that General Vexthar struck first. However, the human's response was excessive. He humiliated a superior officer in front of dozens of witnesses. He neutralized a threat using minimal force. Ambassador Cho countered. He could have struck the general's throat, eyes, or other vulnerable areas. He chose a control technique instead. This shows remarkable discipline. It shows that humans are more dangerous than they appear, Korvan said coldly. Perhaps too dangerous to be trusted within our military structure. Ambassador Cho smiled slightly. Are you suggesting we should be punished for being effective warriors? That seems counterproductive for a military alliance. Before Korvan could respond, Admiral Korvan raised his hand. I want to hear from the cadet himself. Bring him in. 2 guards escorted Taman into the chamber. He was still in restraints, still wearing his training uniform stained with his own blood. His face was badly swollen, the bruise spreading from his cheekbone to his eye. But he walked with his head up, his posture straight. He showed no fear. Cadet Han Taman, the Admiral addressed him formally. You understand you are being charged with assaulting a superior officer? I understand, sir. Do you dispute the charge?
Yes, sir.
I defended myself against an assault. Coalition law permits this. Some would argue your response was excessive. Sir, I used the minimal force necessary to stop the threat. General Vexthar was attempting to strike me again. I controlled his arm and held him until he was no longer a danger. I caused no permanent injury despite having multiple opportunities to do so. Taman paused. If I had wanted to hurt him, I would have. The bluntness of that statement sent a ripple through the chamber. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple fact delivered calmly. General Vexthar stood from his seat. Cadet, I want to ask you something. When you were holding me down, were you ever concerned I might overpower you? Taman looked at him directly. No, sir. Why not? I am much stronger than you. Strength without technique is just wasted energy. You were pushing against a joint lock. The harder you pushed, the more it hurt you. I could have maintained that hold indefinitely. Have you received special training? Combat augmentation? No, sir. Just standard human military preparation. Every human in this academy has the same training. This statement caused another stir in the chamber. The representatives looked at each other with new understanding. If one human cadet could defeat a Krell general, and all humans had similar training, that changed many calculations about human military value. Ambassador Cho stood again. If I may, I would like to address the Council about human military doctrine. It seems there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about our capabilities. Admiral Korvan nodded. Please proceed. The ambassador activated a presentation. Images of Earth appeared on the screens, showing various landscapes, deserts, jungles, mountains, oceans. Earth is classified as a Category 12 death world. For those unfamiliar with this designation, it means our planet has extreme environmental hazards, dangerous predators, and deadly diseases. Humans evolved not as the strongest species on Earth, but as one of the most vulnerable. He showed images of Earth's predators, lions hunting across grasslands, bears standing 3 times human height, sharks cutting through water. These creatures all posed existential threats to early humans. We had no natural weapons, no armor, no significant speed advantage. So we developed something else: intelligence, endurance, and the ability to work together. The presentation continued, showing human hunters running across vast distances, following prey for hours or even days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. We became persistent predators. We might not win a sprint, but we never stop. We follow, we adapt. We outlast. Ambassador Cho pulled up videos of human martial arts training. Over thousands of years, we developed hundreds of fighting systems, all of them based on the same principle: how to defeat an opponent who is bigger, stronger, and better armed than you. We learned to use leverage, timing, and precision rather than brute force. He showed soldiers training in harsh conditions, running through mud, swimming in freezing water, carrying heavy loads across impossible terrain. This is basic training for human military personnel. We believe in pushing bodies and minds beyond what seems possible. We call it embracing the suck. The idea is simple. If you can endure the training, you can endure anything the galaxy throws at you. A Thexian council member raised his hand. Ambassador, Are you saying that what we witnessed in the training arena was normal capability for a human soldier? Not just normal, but expected. Cadet Han would be considered average by human military standards. We have soldiers who specialize in hand-to-hand combat who are significantly more skilled. The chamber erupted in conversation. Representatives spoke urgently to each other in various languages. The Admiral called for order. General Korvan stood again. Admiral, I must revise my earlier statement. If humans possess these capabilities as standard, then they are not too dangerous to trust. They are too valuable to waste. We should be learning from them, not punishing them for defending themselves. This statement from a Krell general shocked many in the room. Korvan continued. I have commanded forces for 30 years. I recognize battlefield effectiveness when I see it. The humans have something we need. They have centuries of experience fighting against physical disadvantages. Most coalition species have never had to develop such techniques, because we relied on our natural advantages. Ambassador Cho nodded respectfully. General Korvan, we would be honored to share our knowledge. Humans didn't come to the stars to prove we're superior. We came to contribute what we can and learn from others. Every species here has strength shaped by their evolution. Krell have power. Vexians have precision. Humans have adaptability and persistence. Together, we're stronger than any of us alone. Admiral Korvan stood. I am prepared to deliver judgment. Cadet Han Taman. This council finds that you acted in lawful self-defense under Coalition Regulation 447C. All charges are dismissed. You are free to return to your duties. The guards removed Taman's restraints. The young man rubbed his wrists but showed no other reaction. He had expected this outcome. The law was clear and he had followed it. The Admiral continued. General Vexthar, you are hereby reduced in rank to Colonel. You will undergo retraining in Coalition conduct regulations and human combat capabilities. You will also issue a formal apology to Cadet Han. Vexthar stood. The demotion was humiliating, but he accepted it with grace. He had learned something valuable, even if the lesson had been painful. He turned to Taman. Cadet Han, I apologize for striking you. I allowed personal prejudice to override my judgment. I underestimated your capabilities and your species. This was my failure, not yours. Taman bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. Apology accepted, Colonel. I hope we both learned something today. I certainly did, Vexthar said quietly. As the council adjourned, various representatives approached the human delegation. They wanted to know more about human training methods. They wanted to understand these techniques that could neutralize superior strength. The attitude had shifted from dismissal to genuine interest. Park Dabin was waiting outside the council chamber when Taman emerged. She threw her arms around him, careful of his injuries. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Taman corrected. Every human here did it just by being ourselves and not backing down. Shin Borum appeared with her medical kit. Now let me fix your face before that swelling gets worse. As they walked through the station corridors toward the medical bay, other cadets watched them pass. The looks were different now. No more dismissive glances or barely hidden contempt. Now there was wariness, respect, even a little fear. Word had spread throughout the station. Humans weren't weak. They were dangerous in ways nobody had anticipated. They came from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill them, and they survived by becoming better at killing than anything that hunted them. In the following days, something remarkable happened. Admiral Korvan announced a new training program. Human cadets would begin teaching combat techniques to other species. The program would be voluntary at first, but the Admiral suspected it would become mandatory within a year. Taman found himself pulled from regular classes to help develop the curriculum. It was strange going from arrested cadet to combat instructor in less than a week, but he adapted as humans always did. The first class was awkward. 20 non-human cadets faced Taman, Shin Borum, and 2 other human volunteers named Wang Jihun and Nam Suji. The aliens were skeptical. They had seen the footage of Taman defeating Vexithar, but most still believed it was luck or trickery. 3 weeks passed since the incident with General Vexthar. Life at Celestial Summit Station had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. Human cadets no longer walked through corridors trying to make themselves smaller and less noticeable. They moved with confidence, knowing that respect had been earned. The combat training program was expanding faster than anyone expected. What started as one experimental class had grown to 5 different sessions running simultaneously. Cadets from every species wanted to learn human fighting techniques. Even some instructors were attending the classes. Taman finished demonstrating a joint lock to a mixed group of Krell, Thexian, and Vorn students. His face had healed, leaving only a small scar on his cheekbone. He wore it without shame. It was proof that he had stood up for himself and his species. "Remember," he told the class, "these techniques aren't about being stronger. They're about using anatomy and physics against your opponent. Every species has joints that only bend certain ways. Find those weak points and the fight is already won." A Thexian cadet named Vrel raised her hand. "But what if your opponent knows these techniques too? What if they're prepared for this kind of attack?" Taman smiled. "Then you adapt. That's the most important lesson. Humans have hundreds of martial arts systems because we never stop learning, never stop evolving our methods. When one technique stops working, we invent 5 new ones." After the class ended, Taman found Vexithar waiting outside the training room. The former general, now colonel, had become a regular presence at the human combat classes. His pride had taken a severe blow, but he was intelligent enough to learn from his mistakes. "Cadet Han, do you have a moment?" Vexithar asked. "Of course, Colonel." They walked together toward the observation deck, where massive windows showed the endless expanse of space. Ships came and went from the station, tiny lights moving against the darkness. "I've been thinking about what you said during our encounter," Vexithar began carefully, "about how your species learned to fight because you had no choice. I've spent my whole life being the biggest and strongest. I never had to think about defeating someone more powerful because there was no one more powerful than a Krell warrior. And now?" Taman asked. "Now I understand that power without wisdom is just violence waiting to happen. You could have seriously injured me that day. You had every right to, by Krell combat traditions. But you showed restraint. That required more strength than any physical technique." They stood in silence for a moment, watching a supply ship dock with the station. "I'm requesting a transfer," Vexithar said suddenly. "Not because of shame, though there is plenty of that, but because I want to go back to the Krell Military Academy and teach what I've learned here. Our warriors need to understand that the galaxy is changing. We can't rely only on our natural advantages anymore." Taman nodded slowly. "That's good, Colonel. Sharing knowledge makes everyone stronger. Before I go, I wanted to say something. When I struck you, I saw you as less than me, weaker, unworthy. That was the opinion of an ignorant fool. You are one of the finest warriors I have ever met, and your species has much to teach us all." Taman extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. Vexithar gripped it carefully, remembering how that small hand had put him on the ground. "Fight well, Colonel. Survive and adapt, Cadet." As Vexithar walked away, Park Dabin approached from the other direction. She had been supervising engineering repairs in one of the lower sections. Her hands were dirty with machine oil, but she was smiling. "I just heard the news," she said. "The Academy Council approved the full integration of human combat training into the standard curriculum. Starting next semester, all cadets will learn basic human defensive techniques." "That's incredible," Taman said, genuinely surprised. "I didn't think they'd move that fast." "They don't have a choice. Word is spreading through the coalition. Other military installations are requesting human instructors. Earth is sending more combat specialists to fill the positions." She paused. "You started something big, Taman. Bigger than you realize." Before he could respond, emergency alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Admiral Corvin's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "All personnel to battle stations. We have incoming hostile contacts. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Taman and Park Dabin ran toward their assigned positions. As they moved through the corridors, they saw cadets and instructors rushing to their stations. This was what they had all trained for, but training and reality were very different things. The tactical display in the command center showed 30 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They weren't coalition vessels. The computer identified them as Galar raiders, a pirate species known for attacking remote stations and colonies. Admiral Corvin stood at the central command platform, his Thexian features calm despite the crisis. "All defensive positions, report status." The responses came quickly. The station's main weapons were online, shield generators at full power, fighter squadrons launching. But everyone knew this would be difficult. 30 ships against one station, even a heavily defended academy, was not good odds. "Sir, why are they attacking us?" an officer asked. "This is a military academy. We're heavily defended. They probably think we're soft, the Admiral replied grimly. An academy full of students instead of veteran soldiers. They're about to learn otherwise. In the boarding defense section, Taman joined a mixed team of cadets and instructors. Vexthar was there, temporarily restored to command for the emergency. He nodded at Taman, no longer with contempt but with respect and something close to friendship. We're going to be defending Corridor Junction 7, Vexthar announced to the team. It's a critical connection point. If raiders breach the hull near there, they could reach the reactor controls within minutes. We cannot let that happen. The team consisted of 3 humans, 4 Krell, 2 Thexians, and 1 Vorn. Under normal circumstances, this would be an awkward mix of species that didn't fully trust each other. But today was different. Today they had all trained together, learned from each other, and understood each other's capabilities. Shin Borum checked her medical supplies. Huang Jihun tested his weapon. Nam Suji reviewed the corridor schematics, her tactical mind already planning defense strategies. The first explosion rocked the station. Raiders had launched boarding pods, breaching the outer hull in multiple locations. Combat reports flooded the communication channels. The Gala were coming in fast and aggressive, exactly as their species was known to fight. Incoming, a Thexian sensor operator called out. Boarding pod heading for Section 7. Here they come, Vexthar said calmly. Remember your training. Krell warriors, you're our anchor point. Humans, you're our flexibility. Thexians coordinate our movements. Vern, you're our speed. Together we are more than any single species could be. The words were almost poetic, coming from a Krell warrior who had once dismissed cooperation as weakness. The boarding pod smashed through the hull with a grinding screech of tearing metal. Raiders poured through the breach, armored and armed with energy weapons. They were Galar, a species that looked like someone had crossed a lizard with a tank, heavily muscled, covered in natural armor plating, and absolutely confident in their ability to overwhelm any opposition. They charged down the corridor, expecting easy prey. Instead, they ran into a defense that had been trained by 3 different species working together. The Krell formed a solid line, their natural strength creating an unmovable barrier. The Galar slammed into them with full force. But this wasn't just a strength contest. The humans moved through gaps in the line, striking at weak points the Krell couldn't reach. Joint attacks, precision strikes, using the raiders' own momentum against them. The Thexians coordinated the defense with mathematical precision, calling out positions and timing. The Vorn moved with supernatural speed, hitting the enemy and disappearing before they could respond. The raiders had numbers and experience, but the defenders had something more important. They had unity created through understanding and mutual respect. Taman found himself fighting beside Torvin, the young Krell who had been his first demonstration partner in the combat class. The cadet had learned fast, now using human techniques to enhance his natural Krell strength. Together they held a side corridor, preventing the raiders from flanking the main defense. A Galar warrior, larger than the others, pushed through toward them. This was clearly one of their commanders, marked by elaborate armor decorations. He carried a massive blade designed for his species' strength. I'll take him, Torvin said, starting to move forward. Together, Taman corrected. Remember what we practiced. They moved as a unit, the Krell's power drawing the commander's attention while the human struck from an unexpected angle. The raider was skilled and experienced, but he had never fought opponents who combined their abilities like this. Within seconds, he was disarmed and on the ground. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out. Every breach point became a lesson in combined tactics. The raiders had expected an easy target. Instead, they found themselves fighting a coordinated defense that used every species' strengths perfectly. In the command center, Admiral Corvin watched the tactical displays. The training arena floated in the heart of Celestial Summit Station, a massive sphere where gravity could be turned on and off with the press of a button. Today it was set to 0. Cadets from different worlds drifted through the air, their bodies moving in ways that would be impossible on solid ground. Hun Taman pushed off from a wall and glided toward his target. He was 22 years old with dark hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. Back on Earth, his family had served in the military for 3 generations. Now he was here, representing his entire species among the stars. His teammate, Park Dabin, spoke through the communication device in his ear. She was watching from the observation deck above, her engineering skills making her perfect for coordinating their movements. Taman, 2 Krell cadets at your 9 o'clock. They're blocking the path to the objective. Taman adjusted his trajectory without speaking. Words wasted oxygen and time. He tucked his body into a roll, spinning past the Krell students who were too big to move quickly in zero gravity. Their strength meant nothing when there was no ground to push against. The objective was a small silver cube floating near the far wall. Taman's team had 30 seconds to retrieve it before the simulation ended. Last week, a Krell squad had tried and failed. They had relied on power and direct approaches. Taman's team was using something different, strategy and adaptation. He caught the cube and pushed off toward the safe zone. His teammate Shinborum was already there, her medical training making her aware of how bodies moved in space. Together, they secured the objective with 5 seconds to spare. The lights came on. Gravity returned slowly, lowering everyone gently to the floor. Taman landed on his feet and handed the cube to the instructor, a small alien with 6 arms named Velcor. The instructor's face was hard to read, but he didn't look happy. Before Velcor could speak, the arena doors opened with a loud crash. Every cadet turned to look. General Vexthar entered the room and the temperature seemed to drop. The general was Krell, standing 9 feet tall with dark blue armor covering his body like the shell of some ancient monster. His species had evolved on a heavy gravity world where only the strong survived. He commanded the Coalition's elite strike division and was famous throughout the galaxy. He was also famous for hating humans. Training exercise complete, Velcor announced quickly, his voice nervous. Nobody interrupted General Vexthar's inspections without consequences. Vexthar's eyes, cold and yellow, scanned the arena. They stopped on Taman and his team. I saw the results. The human squad completed the objective. His voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. Explain to me how such weak creatures succeeded where Krell warriors failed. Park Dabin tensed in the observation deck. Shinborum stepped slightly closer to Taman, ready to support him. But Taman remained calm. He had dealt with officers like this before back on Earth. Bullies existed on every world. Sir, we use the zero-gravity environment to our advantage, Taman said, his voice respectful but firm. In space, mass becomes a disadvantage without proper technique. We minimized our movements and used momentum rather than fighting against it. The general's face twisted. You dare suggest that Krell warriors lack proper technique? No, sir. I'm saying we use different techniques suited to our physiology. The Krell squad's approach was valid for their strengths. Ours was valid for ours. Several alien cadets backed away. Nobody spoke to General Vexthar like this. The general closed the distance between himself and Taman in 3 massive strides. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his armored body blocking out the light. Your species joined the Coalition 5 years ago. 5 years! We have fought and bled for this alliance for centuries, and now you stand here in our academy, claiming your way is better than ours? I claimed no such thing, sir. I simply explained our tactics when you asked. Park Dabin whispered into her communicator, too quiet for the general to hear. Taman, don't push him. Just apologize, but Taman couldn't apologize for succeeding. That would dishonor not just himself but every human trying to prove they belonged among the stars. His grandfather had taught him. Never back down from the truth even when the truth is dangerous. Vexthar's voice rose. You humans think you're special. You come from your little death world and believe that makes you warriors, but you're soft. You break easily. You have no natural armor, no real strength, no speed worth mentioning. He poked Taman's chest with one massive finger, hard enough to make the young man stumble back a step. Sir, with respect, every species has advantages shaped by their home world. Krell have strength. Humans have endurance and adaptability. Neither is superior, just different. The general's hand moved so fast that most cadets didn't see it coming. The back of his armored hand struck Taman across the face with a sound like a hammer hitting meat. The blow would have been considered light by Krell standards, just a disciplinary tap. But Krell standards didn't account for human bone density. Taman's head snapped to the side. He staggered, nearly falling, his boots scraping against the floor as he fought for balance. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. His left cheek was already swelling, the skin darkening with the promise of a spectacular bruise. The observation deck went silent. Park Dabin's hand flew to her mouth. Shinborum reached for her medical kit but didn't move otherwise, knowing that interfering might make things worse. Every human in the room felt their hearts start to pound, their bodies preparing for something their minds hadn't yet processed. General Vexthar laughed. It was a harsh sound full of contempt. Look at you. One gentle correction and you can barely stand. This is why your kind will never be true warriors. You're too fragile, too weak to matter. Taman steadied himself. He worked his jaw slowly, testing if it was broken. It wasn't, but it was close. He could feel his teeth grinding together wrong, could taste copper blood spreading through his mouth. For a moment he just stood there, head down, breathing carefully. Then he straightened up. He rolled his shoulders back. He lifted his head and looked directly at the general, and he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It wasn't nervous or afraid. It was the smile of something ancient, something that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a world that tried to kill it every single day. Blood stained his teeth red. His eye was swelling shut, and he smiled like he had just been given permission to do something he had always wanted to do. The general's laughter died in his throat. Something in that smile triggered instincts older than language, older than civilization. Every predator species in the galaxy recognized that look because they had all worn it themselves at some point in their evolution. It was the look of a hunter that had just spotted prey. "Sir," Taman said quietly, his voice steady despite the blood and swelling. Coalition Regulation 447C states that any officer who strikes a cadet without justifiable cause during peacetime has committed assault. You just assaulted a human. He paused, his smile growing slightly wider. I don't think you understand what that means. Vexthar's confidence flickered. He had expected tears or fear or anger. He hadn't expected this cold, calm response from someone he had just struck hard enough to break bones. He reached out to grab Taman by the collar, intending to strike him again and teach this insolent human a proper lesson about respect. Taman moved. The general's hand closed on empty air, where Taman's collar had been a fraction of a second before. The human had sidestepped, his body twisting with liquid efficiency. Before Vexthar could process what happened, Taman's hands locked around the general's extended wrist, both human hands gripping with every ounce of strength in his body. Then Taman dropped. He didn't fall. He dropped his weight deliberately, pulling the general's arm down with him. At the same time he twisted, rotating his entire body. Physics and leverage did what muscle alone could never accomplish. General Vexthar, 9 feet tall and 600 pounds of armored warrior, crashed face first onto the training mat. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. Taman didn't let go. He adjusted his grip, shifting his body weight to trap the general's arm in a joint lock that human martial artists had been perfecting for thousands of years. One knee pressed against Vexthar's shoulder blade. Both hands controlled the wrist and elbow, bending the arm at an angle that made the general's armor creak ominously. Vexthar tried to rise, confident in his superior strength. The pressure on his arm increased. He tried to roll to use his mass. Taman shifted effortlessly, maintaining perfect control. Every movement the general made only locked the hold tighter. The entire observation deck stood frozen in disbelief. Park Daben's eyes were wide with shock and terror. This was either the bravest or most foolish thing she had ever seen. Possibly both. You can't get up, can you? Taman's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Your exoskeleton makes you strong, General, but it also makes you rigid. Your joints only bend certain ways. Mine don't have that limitation. I can hold this position for hours if necessary. Can you?